Hey everybody, this is Perch, and we are looking at Dark Knight's Metal. So, Metal, a comic book that was Scott Snyder, Greg Capullo, tearing it up right after Rebirth. This was, I think, from what we've heard in later time, this series was not really intended to be as big as it was. It took DC a little bit by surprise. It was meant to be a crossover, kind of leading to what would be Scott Snyder taking over Justice League. It was setting some things up here, and then with No Justice, and it was kind of this moment where Scott Snyder was between his Batman run with Greg Capullo and what he would ultimately go on to do with Justice League, and it was this this little event that was 6 issues long, and then during the course of it, the orders were so strong, it sold so well, better than people thought. They started doing a number of crossovers, and then kind of unusually, a lot of the crossovers also sold well. The Tales from the Dark Multiverse wound up doing very, very well. It brought us the introduction of the Batman Who Laughs, a character wide beloved by every comic reader universally, no doubt about it. People love this character. They cannot get enough of him. I'm being sarcastic. Do I have to say that? I don't say it, and then people get all fussy. At any rate, let's go through what happened with Metal, and this is kind of a breather. So as I mentioned before, I've got a couple videos coming up. I have a super powerful one, like the one I really, really want you to see, and that's coming up next, and it's a look at 2019. And you might say to yourself, that doesn't sound that exciting, actually. Who cares about 2019 anyway? Well, I guarantee you 2019, you're going to see a shocking look at the comic industry. It will show you things you have not seen before. I promise you that, and you are going to love it. And then I am doing Kelly Sue DeConnick's Aquaman run, which is actually, to be fair, I'm doing more than just her run. I'm doing Aquaman in general, because we did the relaunch approach. I want to take a look at what happens at DC when you just go from further back, and you just take a look at what happens when the title just continues, and can you pinpoint what creators do to it. So we've got that. We've got a lot of other things. House of X, Powers of 10, etc. But this is about Metal. So let's get to Metal. So like I said, Metal had 6 issues in it, all about things being metal. And the Batman Who Laughs invading our multiverse with a dark multiverse, and certainly setting in motion what would be all the Justice League and Perpetua and the multiverse and the Omniverse and the death metal and everything we've got going on now. It all started here, folks. So Scott Snyder, Greg Capullo, if you were wondering what these guys look like, here you go. This is what these guys look like. They're there. They're doing something with their hands. They're giving us something. Scott Snyder's doing more of like a magic spell practice kind of thing. And Greg Capullo is saying, here, take my comics. That's what's going on here. Anyway, like I said, debuted in August 2017, spun out of DC Rebirth at the same time as DC's Doomsday Clock event. And if you haven't seen the Doomsday Clock video, go check that one out. You can see how that number performed as well. These are kind of a pair of comics, Doomsday Clock and Metal, because these were kind of the big initiatives coming out of DC at the time. So the series debuted with an incredibly strong 261,997 copies. Of course, variants. All these comics had variants, but this was a big number one, and lots of hype and push. And I believe there were some additional incentives around the variants that went into making this first issue spike up a bit. And by the way, I hope everybody appreciates, because it's metal, we've got this metal looking graph. So we're sticking with the theme here, folks. When I do Aquaman, there'll be fish just everywhere, just sprayed fish all over things, semen everywhere. Anyway, the issue number 2 immediately drops to 149,000. So it almost drops in half from issue 1 to issue 2. And this is not what you normally see with events. Events don't typically do this. Events, more often than not, tend to be a little bit more level because it is an event. But this indicates a couple things. It indicates that first issue did have some additional variants, did have some additional incentives going into it. It also indicated that people, retailers were a little bit more convinced at this point that Doomsday Clock was going to be the big seller, that was going to be the comic that held its audience. But it goes down to 149,000, and then it dips back up. So this issue 3 is when retailers figured out they actually were going to sell a lot of number 1, maybe more than they expected. They're going to be able to dig more into their stock and not have as much for the shelf as they thought. So it jumps back up almost 10,158. and then settles back down to 152. The barometer here for this series is right around 150 to 155. That's where this title settles. So we get issue 4 at 152 with Sandman there on the cover, because we're gonna do some stuff with that IP. And then 149, the lowest selling issue, issue 5, 149. Here it is. And then finally, issue 6 bounces back up. Again, there were a couple more variants in play and a couple other things going on. So it was also meant to be the kickoff point to a brand new status quo in the DC universe was also being promised. So it bumped up a little bit too at 187. But generally, this is what the title looked like. It had a steep drop, relatively flat, slight decline, and then a little pop there at the very end. So all good. So what does this mean? Highest selling issue, number 1, at 261,997. Lowest selling is issue 5 at 149. The average sales across the series was 176, heavily influenced by that first issue. If you take that out, we're really sitting more in the high 150s as our average issue sale, which is nothing to be pissy about. In 2017, as an event comic, I mean, pretty damn good. Nobody's complaining about that. Over the course of the 6 issues, the series had a 28% decline in sales, very much DC's average, which indicates that retailers and other people were seeing this more like a regular comic and a little bit less like an event. And it reads this way with that first issue drop and other things. People were viewing this more as just an average comic as opposed to a big deal, a big event. And I think maybe part of that is a result of the marketing. The marketing was heavily going at Doomsday Clock as being the event. And it was not really, I mean, metal was kind of there. It was kind of a special thing. It was an event, but it wasn't being billed as the event. And then during the course of this whole series, it kind of flipped where they started promoting metal a lot more than Doomsday Clock did. As Doomsday Clock had this slow and steady decline. Still, actually, to be fair, Doomsday Clock still had that first issue drop, but it wasn't as dramatic as this. There was just a little bit less to it. You might also remember that Doomsday Clock sold better out the gate. That first issue kind of bumped up higher in the first issue. So, all things considered, maybe I'm going back on what I said a little bit, but they do read a little bit different as series. So, the trend of this series goes from 240,000 to 165. You see that little curve back up. It kind of slowly bottoms out and it starts to go back up again. If there had been another issue, like an issue 7, that would have continued, it would have seen a much steeper incline. But just coming in there right at the end just means it just had a slight bump back up. So 31% trend decrease from issue 1 to issue 6. But then if we take out that first issue, we see the all-coveted increase of 150 to 165. And that's where you get a 10% trend increase from issue 2 to issue 6. So not anything to be upset about. This series, White Knight, both had that little bit of a trend increase percentage over the course, although White Knight didn't have the steep drop from issue 1 to issue 2. But yeah, this is good. Life is pretty happy. But now let's take a look at another number. Now I've added in the reprints. Okay, so this changes the picture slightly. See, people are asking me, well, what about the reprints? You're not counting the reprints. Reprints account for like another 500,000 copies sold. Well, no, not that many. And so here you see on the screen in blue, you see the reprints, and you see that it definitely boosted issue 1 up, boosted issue 2 up, and it boosted some of issue 5 up. You actually see that in this new light, with the comics like this, the low issue is no longer issue 5, but it's issue 4. And so it's a little bit of a different story with the reprints. It does mean, if you look at that last issue, issue 6, which had fairly low reprints, all things considered, that it kind of leveled out there nicely, and the retailers at this point by issue 6 were ordering what they believed they could sell. And it's a little bit more aligned in terms of a comic. So if we look at the numbers here, 292 still doesn't crack 300, but does pretty damn well. And then goes to 177, to 168, to 160, back up to 166, and finally 290,000. So, with reprints, pretty strong selling issue. Every comic selling over 150 in today's day and age, especially 2017, this picture, along with the fact that a lot of the tie-ins and other things did very well, explains exactly why DC went to the well. It explains why they use the Batman Who Laughs so much. By the way, I'll chart that at some other point. The Batman Who Laughs series also sold over 100,000 copies. That sold incredibly well. And so when you have this character that I've heard many people, and my own personal opinion aside, hate that character. Like, it's a very annoying character. But when you put that character in a comic and it sells over 100,000 copies, I mean, what are you going to do? That's why he keeps showing up, folks. It's right there. So again, adding the reprints does little to change the overall performance, the curve of the series. The middle issues get flatter. It means that it calibrates a little quicker once you get down to issue 2. In terms of how it did in the market, it had 3 of the 6 issues were the #1 issue of the month, and the other 3 the #2 selling issue of the month. So, again, strong selling event. There was a period there where, with Doomsday Clock, with White Knight, and with Metal, DC was owning a lot of the top 10. And this was probably a good moment for them. They lost it. It was a good moment. So some key takeaways. Series boosted a steady audience over 150,000. That's good. It hasn't been anything that a company has been able to replicate since. King in Black is likely to do it, but we will see. It is unquestionably the healthiest DC event dating back to Blackest Night. You have to get to Blackest Night before you get an event that looks as strong. And now the emphasis I put on the word event there is that the New 52, if you start to call that an event, you will see similar things. But in terms of all in all, an event, this was the healthiest DC event. And I say that from the standpoint of the series itself and the tie-ins, everything sold well. And so it was a good thing for them. And yeah, several of the tie-ins broke the top 10. This doesn't happen regularly with events. The last time when this happened with regularity was, again, Blackest Night for DC and Civil War for Marvel. That was where the events had a big boost up. And so, it's good for them. Did some good things. But that's Metal in a nutshell. A nice, easy one for me. 6 issues, not that hard to track. I know many of you are like, get to the good stuff. Let's get to these 30, 40 issue runs. And that is where it's more exciting, no doubt about it. But when you see the 2019 kind of state of comics, I'm dealing with a massive amount of information. You're talking, you will be shocked. It's thousands and thousands of comics that are pulling in to do this analysis. So you'll understand a little bit why I took a breather with Doomsday Clock and Metal before we get to this one, and then we dive into Aquaman. So anyway, hope you're enjoying these. Hope they're fun and they're providing you some good entertainment. That's what this is all about. And more importantly, providing some good education about what comics sell. I mean, go in strong there. And thanks to all the people who've come to the channel, love, like this stuff. If you hate all the rest of this stuff, that's okay too. I am putting all of these sales analysis videos, the ones like this, into a playlist. So you can easily just go right to that playlist, skip all the other crap. It's up to you. Anyway, let me know any questions in the comments below. Like and subscribe. Thanks to everybody who supports the channel, and thanks for listening.